Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Supermarketers podcast. My name is Gan Furukawa, and today we have a very special treat. We have Steve Toth, who is the founder of Notebook Agency, which is a Toronto-based GEO and SEO consultancy that helps B2B SaaS companies, and now also a component of coaching for agencies and in-house marketers. Steve, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I appreciate the invite. So for those of you who haven't followed me in the past, basically been in the SEO space for over 15 years now, was the former SEO manager at FreshBooks, left that company to start my own solo consultancy, and that's now evolved into an agency, involved into coaching for both in-house teams and agencies to help them shape their AEO, GEO service. So very, very passionate in the space, and also operate two newsletters that ship weekly. SEO Notebook, which has been going since 2019. And then last year, I launched AInotebook.com, which focuses exclusively on AEO, GEO, and also taught the course, which is available at CXL for answer engine optimization. So very, very passionate in this space and happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm excited because we're going to be getting actionable, tactical, and over the shoulder look at your screen. But one thing also, I think that's kind of the through line and a foundation for this is just your approach to this. A couple of things is the trust alignment framework and also mirroring. So basically how you're identifying what these LLMs are saying for a particular brand or a client. But can you just give me an overview of what those are and how that's a peek into how you approach AEO and GEO?
Yeah, for sure. So it's something we talked about a lot in the course for CXL, and really actually came together in the preparation for that course, which was launched last spring. And, a lot of the industry has approached LLM visibility and, some way to basically measure our performance almost as like transposing the idea of rank tracking keywords on a Google or pages on a Google SERP and through keywords to an LLM and like the order in which your brand is mentioned. And what, I realized in like kind of, working in this space for the last 2 years and then finally kind of really aggregating a lot of my advice into a 3-hour course for CXL, it was, clear to me that the LLM journey is not just about, non-branded discovery type of keywords that have high CBC in Google, but really moving towards searches that are more deal breaker focused, where a user has essentially been able to collapse that journey that they might have gone through after searching a head keyword to like, doing research and then saying that, I need something very specific. I need an EOR platform that I can pay contractors in, India, Pakistan, and, Bangladesh, and that I need it to, I need to set up a separate entity and I need it to do device management for me. Right. And like being very specific about what their needs are. Their, users are able to use, and really collapse their research journeys. And when they know what they want, they're not, figuring that out on a demo call. They're coming to the demo call with exactly what they want. And LLMs afford, folks to be able to do that research very efficiently. But one of the most important things is, how is our representation for those things that our product team has been, working so hard to build, and is that accurately reflected? In a world where, SaaS companies are shipping at a higher rate, there may be a lot of online chatter about a feature that they don't have or a feature that is not very good yet. The team has then launched that last quarter and improved that feature a lot, but the LLM still has this perception that it may not exist or it doesn't have, the reviews that people are giving it now, right? So the idea of the trust alignment framework is basically to have the LLMs answer as if they were your top salesperson. So actually measuring what they say about you, finding the sources that are influencing that narrative, finding the disparity between your sales grade answer and what the LLM is responding with, and basically looking to correct that and net that out into a score that can be improved over time. So it's a different take on, just tracking mentions or tracking the order of mentions, and, that idea of taking the SERP tracking to LLMs basically, and really, making it so that the focus is on representation. And, that's really our only way to kind of improve our stead in what otherwise is a black box journey that, we really don't have any visibility into.
Yeah, and I like that you've kind of simplified it as well down to 6 core pillars, which I noted: vertical, company size, comparisons, pricing, integrations, and features, which really does seem to check the box of anybody who is exploring a particular solution, depending on anywhere in the funnel. Those are some of the key things that they're going to be asking about. So if you can nail those in a checkbox, then you might have your boxes covered in terms of what an LLM would be looking for in order to cite or recommend you.
Yeah, I can actually even share my screen to show tangibly how that works. And, it's always live demos are always interesting, but I'm happy
Yeah, yeah, let's do it.
to see, like, what ChatGPT kind of says, right? So for example, if I go to deep research, and I like to use the legacy version of this because it tends to give these follow-up questions. So if I type something like best global payroll software, right? This might be the very beginning of their journey, right? But you can see here that it's come back with a bunch of questions, right? So company size, which is what we talked about, it wants to know if it's going to tailor a solution to a small, medium size, or enterprise business. It wants to know what regions we need to run payroll in, features we need, we talked about being important, and then budget. And, I can kind of like cycle this a few different times and see, what it kind of wants to net out into. If I took that same search and then did it in Perplexity, we can kind of see right off the bat like what it's actually searching for. So if we uh, look at, where is it? The There should be a steps here. Let's see if one is, yeah. So here we can see like what actual fan outs Perplexity research, right? So we can see that it searched for best global payroll software 2026. So we know that recent information is important. But if we even go like more into like the deep research and type that again, we'll see even more of those fan out queries start to surface, right? So this is where we kind of start looking at like business size, employees, software evaluation preferences. This is, and you can see how it is also coming back with a bunch of questions again, right? Like how many employers or contractors do you need paid? Do you need employer of record or just payroll processing? What is the primary goal of this research? And then how should I deliver results? So what we kind of notice is when we do these searches, whether it's on Gemini, Perplexity, ChatGPT, that, basically these are the kind of 6 pillars that come up most often in a B2B research journey. And then once we kind of know the way that, Google, ChatGPT, Perplexity are guiding these searches, we can, tune our content not only to like those topics in particular, but also where those topics intersect, right? So like, for example, if budget is obviously a very important deal breaker for folks, talking about budget for the different sizes of companies or what the pricing is for different sizes of companies could be a way to become hyper relevant, once the person has kind of stated those as their deal breakers.
That is really interesting. And so that is essentially what you're calling the prompt mirror
Yeah.
technique or
So
something?
yeah, we have different names for it, but yeah, you could call it prompt mirror is not the active term that we're using. Maybe I have to update my info page for that. But yeah, so this is like the idea about mirroring. Well, that is more along the lines of like mirroring the LLM's answer compared to your sales grade answer. But the prompt, understanding the refinements, which is kind of where I've focused my nomenclature on that. We have resources that, for example, take a bunch of those refinements from ChatGPT. You run them 5, 6, 7, 8 times. You collect all the refinements and then put them in this GPT to summarize them and also tell you like which are the most frequent refinements. Knowing that for your category is power when it comes to AEO.
Yeah, I saw you posted recently, like, you can pay for, a couple $1,000s or hundreds for, a profound type prompt tracking tool. Or alternatively, you also are being told this if you are in sales calls, you have the transcripts, you have the chat transcripts, you have reviews online, which is another way of getting that as a proxy for what people are typing in. But you were sharing another idea before we started recording in terms of how you can actually almost like create the volume in terms of prioritizing and grouping. Because I think one of the challenges with these prompt tracking tools is that it is a black box. There is no uniformity. So, and there's also the whole mess of background and context that a LLM would get. My result will be different than yours. So if you could walk us through that process of how you're actually identifying this and then grouping it so that kind of an idea of what volume is at different
Yeah,
stages of the funnel.
yeah, for sure. So I'll just back up and set a bit of context before I share with you a couple of techniques to do that. So, in SEO, we've traditionally had keyword search volume. Google publishes that for AdWords advertisers. SEOs leverage that data. There's also clickstream data, which is collected via Google browser sessions through different Chrome extensions that folks have. So if you can get a panel that is, big enough, meaning that panel is people who have these extensions that are essentially spying on what they search, we can start to estimate, what keywords are trending, which ones are bigger compared to others, and also use cues like what is the cost per click for that keyword to determine how valuable it could be to rank for and be visible for. With LLMs, we don't have any of that, right? We're so nascent, and I'm not sure if we ever will have that because the nature of the prompts are much longer and more complex and contain multiple deal breakers in them. And if you think about it, every word that you add to the prompt, to any prompt, makes it less likely that it's even going to be searched twice. And then you add on top of that the answer that you would do even for a search that would be done twice are going to be different. And then you add on top of that the personalization of LLM results being even more than Google results, and it kind of quickly falls apart. So there are some companies that have taken the panel data approach to trying to determine prompt volume. But the problem is we have a much smaller sample, and people don't only use ChatGPT to search keywords. They use it to write emails, to do math homework, to create recipes. Like, they use it for a lot of other things than just commercial searches, right? Or informational or mid-funnel searches. So if you think about the Google panel data, it's a lot more extensive and it's a lot more focused because people aren't using Google to write their emails or solve their math homework as much as like they are to actually do real searches, right? So basically the tools have tried to collect data from ChatGPT sessions and tried to determine how often a prompt is searched. But it's rife with problems, and there's a lot of extrapolation that has to take place in order to do that. And I've done research where I've compared Google search volume to ChatGPT search volume, And for keywords like legal practice management software, for example, the LLM tools, not going to name the one, but said that there was more searches on ChatGPT than there were on Google for that, which I find like really hard to believe, right? So, understanding the way that LLMs want to shape their journey is one way that you can kind of get to where the intent would be. But another is a Claude project that I set up that I can share my screen on, and you can use your Google Search Console data, or in this case, I just used Ahrefs data. And what the cool thing about this is basically all I did was just take a report of matching terms for project management software and uploaded it into this intent volume bot, which has a pretty long and complex prompt that will essentially take all of the keywords in that report and cluster them, which is what you can see on the right hand side. So instead of just looking at search volume for one keyword, and I'll open up the sheet that this exported as well, instead of just looking at like search volume for free PM software or marketing project management software, what it will do is it clusters all of the like keywords together, right? So you know that in this case, the intent here is for construction project management software keywords. So instead of just looking at project management software construction industry and trying to gauge whether or not there's search volume for one term, what this Claude project does is it takes all of those 217 keywords and it adds together the combined search volume. So this gives you an idea that there's a lot of folks searching for construction management software, huge cluster of keywords combined, and that it also maps out the funnel stage for you, right? So you can kind of see here on this right hand side that this just general project management software is the highest, but that there's then construction and then best PM software, best project management software as a then free, et cetera, portfolio management software. The list kind of goes down. So we can basically what we can infer from this is, depending on the aggregate intent volume, which is really what this is, combining all those keywords, we can kind of say that if people are searching Google, or if you see it in your own search console, if you use search console keywords for this, it's going to add the impressions. That if there's demand for that, then likely that's also something that somebody's going to be searching in ChatGPT for as well. So this tool and this intent clustering can take us away from only looking at volume for a single keyword, but look at the volume for the whole cluster of related keywords, and help us focus our decision making and our content creation, our backlink building, and all that kind of stuff on the areas where the demand is highest.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. Now, when you take it one step further, so say, for example, you identify that project management free is a cluster of keywords that has high volume, and a lot of keywords repeating. How do you take it to the next step in terms of what type of content to create? And then of that content, is it like you're going to create multiple posts or super long tail, or do you go for like something that's maybe a little bit more in depth, but each section might be more specifically tailored to one of those long tail questions?
Yeah. So I think you have to look at you should look at the SERPs, like where is Google delineating the need for one page over the other. But what's also important to understand about LLM optimization is that it's not a matter of ranking a relevant page anymore. It's actually a matter of ranking a relevant passage. So finding like a paragraph of text, around 100 to 300 tokens loosely. There are ways, and there's actually tools from Google that we can use to chunk pages into excerpts that basically LLMs can interpret and then rank these passages one against the next. There's a technology called Vertex AI that will do that by Google Cloud on Google Cloud, and then maybe there's multiple places where you could put that information, right? Maybe you put some of that information on your homepage, and then you put another one on like a customer case study or a comparison page. You don't have to make the entire page about it, but you can basically pepper this content, these ideas that you offer, construction management software in a few different places where it's relevant, right? Like, let's say you had a case study, and it was like this construction software, this construction company used project management construction software to achieve Y. And then you've got your main page on that, but you're still talking about that throughout your site. What I've noticed in my practice is that ChatGPT is more likely to cite the general page. So, like, let's think of it as like the ultimate guide kind of a page, whereas Google AI mode is much more likely to take things like the customer story case study page and cite that when you're asking about, like, time to ROI, for example, for a ABM product or what have you. Google AI mode, since Google uses its own closed index, essentially, this index is a passage ranking index, is not a page ranking index. So it's looking for specific sections of a page that support its reasoning journey, and not only a page that's relevant. So there is going to be a lot of variance from model to model, and we're still in a nascent stage where Google hasn't changed their default search experience that drastically. I mean, we do see AI overviews cropping up into over 50% of searches, but we still have ads looking the same way. We still have 10 blue links being an option, but in a future state where there's something more akin to AI mode, or just a few weeks ago, or maybe less than a couple of weeks ago, Google released something called Canvas, which is essentially almost a web page instead of a search result. Those types of things are changing rapidly, and it's a matter of trying to optimize for something that isn't even there yet, right? So there's a what you have to understand, though, the major sort of differences being that Claude uses the Brave search engine. ChatGPT tends to cite more general sources, likes to cite from the actual first party, whereas like Gemini and Google AI mode are a lot more UGC focused, and will cite pages that aren't even optimized whatsoever for SEO, but they contain a relevant passage that supports that reasoning journey. So a lot of kind of, it depends, and a lot of nuances to this stuff, but I think that's why people end up hiring folks like us, because we kind of cut through that noise and shortcut their understanding of things.
Yeah. And then to change the game even more, I think as of today, mid-March, ChatGPT is rolling out ads in its responses, which muddies the waters on how much you want to believe what they're recommending.
Yeah, I think though, in the B2B space, which is your audience, and really where we focus on at Notebook Agency as well, that ads experience, I don't think is going to crop up as much, because if a person is at work, they're not likely to be using the free version of ChatGPT, which is right now at least where the ads are relegated to. But I think the really cool thing about being in this space and being in B2B right now is that if you think about it, right, and you're head of HR, and you've tasked your director to start looking at a payroll solution, a global payroll solution, because you're opening an office, or you're a remote team or whatever. You have a need, right? and you task somebody at your company to do research. If that person has not used AI to do their research, they're going to come back with something that's like really weak, and people are going to look at them funny, right? They're going to be like, you didn't do your job here. Like, you have all these tools at your disposal, and we're expecting a very in-depth, nuanced, researched, which company met their deal breakers, which company met their pricing kind of research. It's almost it's a must that the B2B researcher is using AI to help inform their shortlist, right? And the thing that we're seeing with our clients who've been successful is that the leads that they generate are way more educated when they actually book the demo call, and that the sales cycle is much shorter for an LLM lead. And I mean, we see this reflected in the analytics as well. The average ChatGPT user spends 4 or 5 times more time on the site, converts at a 4 or 5 times higher conversion rate when that referral traffic is coming from ChatGPT. Obviously, it's not going to be as high as the Google traffic, but your sales team is really going to appreciate those kinds of leads, and people are effectively making their decisions off your website. So your representation in those conversations is super important.
Absolutely. And yeah, last year, SEMrush also came out with a study that corroborated that in terms
Yeah,
of,
4.4 times higher. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that is really interesting. So one thing I wanted to close out on is you had a case study on Spellbook, and it was really great because I think you increased your organic traffic 90% year over year, right?
Yeah.
And um, I think it sounded like you were focusing on non-branded and bottom of funnel and maybe a lot of content refreshes, and identifying where those opportunities are. But I'd love if you could expand a little bit on your analysis there and how you address that and attack those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. So Spellbook, for those of you who don't know, is a legal AI contract review software that targets transactional lawyers. So they have a plugin for Microsoft Word that essentially helps these lawyers redline contracts and strengthen those contracts for their clients. So their tool is just amazing and is saving lawyers like 20 hours a week, and probably allowing one lawyer to do the work of like 3 or 4 lawyers in a week. So you can just tell how much impact that would be having on an industry like that. And without going into like too much classified detail in terms of like respecting the client, essentially what we wanted to do was capitalize on a lot of emerging keywords in that space, because traditionally the legal industry has been a little bit slow to adopt new technologies, a bit set in their ways. But we see the search volume for this stuff emerging in our own data, and understanding as well like the pros and cons of working with their competition, and finding the areas where Spellbook delights customers, whereas like a competitor of theirs customers have frustration. There's opportunities for us to leverage that sentiment that's out there, right? And then basically there's just very specific searches around like contract redlining for somebody who already knows that AI is doing this, and then there's also searches just for people who are like, AI is a thing. How is this affecting the legal industry? And then they start to research companies like Spellbook. So there's a number of like methods of attack with this, and we've been very successful with them, working with them for over a year now, and then achieve that like 90% increase in non-branded traffic. It's just popping off right now. So our relationship with them is we have a Slack channel. We meet every couple weeks to plan our sprints, and we have their developer on the call. We collaborate really closely with that client, and we've achieved amazing results for them. I think they've publicly said that there's over 4,000 law firms that use them, and then some of those law firms are huge, right? So I think they just raised $90 million even within the last 2 months, and that's like, I don't know, Series B or C. So I think their value is over 350 million right now. We've been really privileged to be a part of their growth.
Matt, amazing. Congrats on that, and thanks for sharing. But Steve, thank you for sharing so much, being so transparent and forthright with your education and expertise in AEO. Can you share the best way to learn more about you, agency, AI,
For sure. So I
AEO?
think just connecting with me on LinkedIn, Steve Toth, Toth. I'm not the Texas politician named Steve Toth. Unfortunately,
Yep.
he's kind of messed up some of my name search a little bit, but apparently he just defeated somebody recently too. But yeah, Steve Toth, SEO, Steve Toth, AEO. The newsletters are seonotebook.com and ainotebook.com. And then I also run coaching for agencies to help shape their AEO packages, as well as help in-house teams modernize those their own AEO programs. I don't actually advertise that. It's all through word of mouth, and been able to book successful cohorts essentially where I'm pairing up two different agencies together for an 8-week program, doing the same with in-house marketers who don't compete. And the word of mouth for that has spread, quite rapidly, and it's become, something that I really enjoy and that actually pushes me to do more innovative work because I really want to bring it for my students and stuff. So we basically have two cohorts that go at a time. And if you want to learn more about that, go to stevetoth.coach. That's just going to redirect to a simple Notion page with a form. But there's also the opportunity to book what's called a Powered 25 meeting with me, where it's a 25-minute meeting. I share 3 resources from the accelerator, along with where you can ask me questions and I can just talk with you about your specific strategy. And those are often a point where I'm able to share a lot of knowledge, deliver a lot of value in that 25 minutes. And I think usually the outcome is that people want to continue working with me from there.
Incredible. Well, we're at 31 minutes and you have shared a ton of value. So thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it, Steve.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Take care.